So we are finishing our flat loom weaving piece. We have already worked from the top down on this one with our plan of the multicolor black, white, a long aqua, and then we're repeating the pattern, white, black, and the multicolor. If we were to divide it in half, you can see that it's the same on both sides, and if we were to divide it in half in the middle, it is the same on both sides. So we have done a really great job with our symmetry. We're going to finish. I have 10 rows so far, actually 20, because I'm going a half and then one. And I need to get to 13 like the one above, so I'm going to continue. This is my half. Remember not to pull too tightly. Now turning back. This is 11. Half. $12. Take care of my knot just real quick. I've had a lot of knots. Half. And 13. So if you're wondering how I got that number, I was looking at this part. So this is the part that I'm counting, and you can't see the under, so that's why I was going by halves. So I have a symmetrical weaving, and now I'm going to show you how to take it off of the loom and how to take care of these loose ends. So I have plenty of room down here at the bottom of my weaving. I could see if I could stretch my warp and pull it off. The only problem that I've had with that, and I can actually do that on this one, the only problem I have with that is that sometimes you bend the loom, and if you're wanting to keep weaving, then you definitely don't want to get this bent. Okay, so we're going to take our scissors and cut that in half, and we're going to tie it just like we're tying knots, okay? Just like the beginning of tying your shoe. So I'm going to go under, pull, and then again. And that's going to make sure that all of this weft that you just took time to weave so carefully stays put. I have some examples. The Oaxacan example that I showed, they did not tie their warp. Well, they wove so tightly that it's not going to come apart. So, and on these little looms, you just have a few pieces to tie together. You need 2 to tie a knot, and we're double knotting, and I have one that's here by itself. And so I'm going to just tie it to one of the white warps beside it, just to get that to be secure, just like so. Okay, and now you're going to take your tape off if you still have tape, maybe you didn't use tape, we're going to take our tape off. And we're going to now pull it off of the top. It comes off very easily. And we're going to do the same thing with our warps at top. They are not as long as the ones on bottom, so you can either push it down to get some length. You're going to cut in the middle. Notice that I'm not cutting all of them at the same time. When you do that, then your weft starts to unravel, and it also gets confusing which warp string you're trying to put with which one. So I suggest just cutting the one in the middle and then tying it. And then once again, we still have an extra. And I could tie it to this, but I don't want that color. So I'm gonna tie it to this here, and then I'm just gonna cut it to match. So now, what are we gonna do with all of these strings that are hanging out? There is a weaving technique where you attach them as you go, and that's a little more advanced than what I thought we would try. So I'm going to teach you another way, and it just simply uses the length that you have and your needle. So you're going to decide which is the front and which is the back. And on this example, you can see that I chose a different weaving pattern up here, so it is evident that this is the back compared to the front. Okay, so I'm going to start on the back. I'm going to take my needle, put it through this extra, and I'm just going to go on the back side. Notice that my needle's not even poking through the front. Okay, you're just working on the back, and you're gonna hide that string. Okay, and once you do that, you could even cut it just a little bit shorter. And I'm gonna do the same thing for this piece. The only reason this might not work out is if for some reason you're using this and it needs to be either or on the sides. But if you're hanging this on the wall, no one's going to see the back. If you're laying this on your dresser, no one's going to see the back. You know, there's just majority won't be seen. How could you display this if you don't want to just put it on your wall? You could actually get a mat board, a piece of black poster board, and cut it a little bit larger. And you can see how we're hiding those. And you could mount your piece on that and then frame it. I have a weaving on a standing loom that my mom got me, and the weaving is still on the loom, so that's how they decided to display that. Okay, you're just tucking that in. You're just hiding it on the back, securing it so it doesn't unravel, and then just cutting. You don't want to cut real close, but just cut a little bit. If you are displaying this on the poster board, that's one way. Maybe you want to just keep the tape on the back. Maybe no one is ever going to see the back, and so you just tape these pieces. So I'm just going to take a moment, and you can see that the top part is already cleaned up. And I'm just going to finish here at the bottom. This might be difficult if you cut these strings too short when finishing. Maybe you're having a hard time putting this yarn on your needle. So this would be a good time to ask your loved one for help when they have a moment. I think that one's going to work. Almost complete. Once you know how to hide it, and you can put your yarn through your needle quickly, it really doesn't take that long. And my last two. Looking as I'm finishing and I'm hiding these pieces, looking at the front of this piece and the long aqua turquoise area, I didn't put any shapes or difficult patterns on this piece, but if you created something similar to mine and you don't like how long it looks and it bugs you a little bit, then take your needle with a color or a contrasting color from your piece and do some easy stitching. You don't have to, but you can if you want. You just put the contrasting color on your needle, and you're going to come up from the bottom, and you might want to sketch it out if you're not exactly sure where you're headed. But now that you have woven, you have created a fabric-like structure or situation that you can stitch into. So I'm just coming up. I'm not worried about my warp anymore. I'm not going over under anymore. I am just using simple stitching to add some interest to this middle section. And you would just keep going. Let's move this aside and let's look at the asymmetrical piece that I worked on, and I showed you some different weaving patterns and techniques. To take this piece off, you would do the exact same thing that I did to the little one. Notice at the bottom that I have gone back and I've added more of this fringe idea. And I just continued using the same warps that have been gathered together. And so I started with 5 inches of the red orange, and then my next layer was 7 inches of this textured red, and then my third layer was 9 inches of the red orange, and you can see how that's creating the layered fringe look. And then our last layer is going to be the red warp itself, and we're just going to do the exact same thing to take it off as we did with the little one. This loom has been well loved by my students here, and so you can see that there are teeth missing from the loom. Some are torn, some are bent. You can see that one is already popped off by itself. This was actually stretched. The warp was put on by one of my students. So I'm just going to carefully take it off, cut that in the middle, and then I'm going to finish the fringe by just knotting that. If this is a popular look right now with weavings, if you don't like the bulky multiple fringe look, then just do the single tying off of the warp like we did on the smaller example. It's completely up to you. I would double knot it just to make sure that your fibers are secure. You've gone to all this time and work, and you don't want your piece to unravel or someone to pull it, or while they're looking at it do something to it. That would be really frustrating. What's happening here? Oh, my student put this piece all the way on the back. That happens sometimes. Learning how to get your loom ready can be confusing. especially when you have so many pieces. Okay, so let's see. Okay, that's gonna work out with my odd number. Okay, so for this look, you would have your multicolor, textural, multi-length. And if you didn't like how abrupt this was at the top, you could make it a little more random as you went down on your layers so that it wasn't so choppy, maybe. And then you would finish the top part the same, taking, I'm gonna push it down just a little bit so I have some room to work with. And you might notice that I've left this open, which is perfectly fine. You can leave a part of your warp exposed as part of your style or your piece. And then I would just take these off the same, and you can see that you have a smaller part to work with, and so it's going to be a little more difficult, but you're going to snap it in the middle, tie in a knot. I know you can't see this very well, but you can see it when I'm done. Tied in a double knot. And this is something that older students can definitely do with this smaller area. If a younger student has gone for the bigger weaving piece, then they might need some help with this. And then you're going to hide these pieces on the back. Another kind of popular idea right now, and I'll show you an example on this yellow, is to keep portions out, and then it's just kind of frayed. And so you would leave that piece out and frayed, and the fraying helps stabilize the fiber so it's not coming undone. So our symmetrical piece on the small loom, using our basic pattern of over, under, over, under, and our harder, more intricate weaving patterns on a larger loom with the red weft, the red warp, and yeah, hope you had fun.